Forgiveness is the act of setting someone free from an obligation to you that is the result of a wrong done against you. It is to cease to feel resentment against. For an example, a debt is forgiven when you feel your debtor or you free your debtor of his obligation to pay back what he owes you. Forgiveness then involves three elements. Injury. Secondly, a debt resulting from injury. And then, thirdly, a cancellation of the debt. All three of these elements are essential if forgiveness is to take place. When we refuse to forgive, and when someone has an holding on against us, in a sense, we are held hostage. We are painfully aware of what it means to be a hostage or for someone to be taken hostage. Yet the truth is that we are outraged when the news of such an atrocity reaches us. And yet when we refuse to forgive others, or ourselves for that matter, there is a sense in which we hold them hostage. When a person is taken hostage on the international scene, the abductors usually want something. It may be money, it may be a weapon, or the release of prisoners. But the message they send, in essence, is, if you give us what we want, we'll give you back what we have taken. And there's always some type of condition. When we refuse to forgive others for a wrong done to us, we are saying essentially the same thing. But instead of holding people hostage until we get our demand, we withhold our love, our acceptance. We withhold our respect, kindness and patience, or whatever the other person value, we withhold it from them. The message we're saying is this: until I feel that you have repaid me for the wrong done to me, you will not have my acceptance. If we go back to the definition here, we can see that the element missing from this scenario is cancellation of the debt. Person who refused to forgive, refused to cancel the debt. And brothers and sisters, you have to agree with me tonight that there are many debts in our mind and in our heart that needs a cancellation. But who is the real loser here? A person who has an unforgiving spirit is always the real loser. Regardless of how wrong the other person may have been, if we allow ourselves to be overcome by that unforgiving spirit, then we are the losers. The unforgiving spirit invites the waiting game. The person with an unforgiving spirit usually waits for the other person to make restitution. How many of us here tonight waiting for the other person to make restitution. But you see, during this time, fleshly patterns of behavior and incorrect thought process develops. Well, a Christian will find that it is easier and it's better to forgive than to resist. Forgiveness saves the expense of angels, the cost of hatred, and the loss of God's Spirit. When a person forgives another person, he promises to do three things about the wrongdoing. First of all, he promised not to use it against the wrongdoer in the future. And secondly, not to talk about it to others. And thirdly, not to dwell on it himself. You see, the life of Christianity must teach us to forgive much, but to seek forgiveness much more. For he who cannot forgive others breaks the bridge over which he himself must pass if he would ever reach heaven. For everyone has need to be forgiven. Well, the basic of our fellowship with God is forgiveness. And our fellowship with each other is made possible only because we are willing to forgive each other. There are too many broken friendships and fellowships created by that spirit of unforgiveness. For you see, forgiveness is one of the most difficult voluntary decisions that a man can make. You see, nobody can make you forgive. You have to volunteer. You have to have something on the inside that makes you willing and want to. And yet the truth is, the nearest we will be like God as representatives on earth is when we forgive. Forgiveness is the mortar that holds the church together. But little and vicious minds are bound with anger and revenge and are incapable of feeling the pleasure of forgiving. You see, revenge is like a dog biting you, and then you get down and bite the dog. If one had reason to rule, he should have mercy to forgive. The first is law and the last is prerogative. So we speak to you tonight about forgiveness instead of stone. I don't know about you, but I have a feeling that we've had enough stone. I think we've had enough stones. The word instead has to do with something in the place of a person or thing mentioned. A preferred alternative. Stones are a hard, solid, non-metallic mineral matter of which rocks are composed. Stones had in biblical time military uses. They were convenient missiles of the hand. Now let's look at our text again tonight. This passage has been the subject of more eager debate than any other in the gospel. It is omitted by many ancient manuscripts. It is rejected by several of our fathers. It bears in its fabric, in its original, traces of the tremendous storm through which it has passed. It revealed in our Savior's character a wisdom so profound, a tenderness to sinners so delicate, and a hatred of sin so intense, and an insight into human hearts so searching. Having come to seek and to save the lost, Jesus never shrank from close association with sinners. In his journeys, he conversed with at least 3 women who had been guilty of adultery. The woman of Samaria, the woman who came to him in the house of Simon, and now the woman of the narrative before us. It is interesting to observe the circumstances leading up to the exposure of the woman taken in adultery. Our Lord had spent the night on the Mount of Olives, about 1 mile east of Jerusalem. Rising early in the morning, Jesus made his way to the temple. And then when a sufficient number had gathered, he withdrew to a seat against the treasury wall and began to teach the expected people. He sat down and taught them. Jesus stood, Jesus walked, and Jesus sat. Each of these expressions in John's gospel conveys a distinctive moral truth. Jesus stood, directs attention to the dignity and vastness of his person. Jesus walked, referred to the public manifestation of himself. Jesus sat, points to the condescending lowness and meekness and grace. He has not succeeded far in his discourse when a band of scribes and Pharisees, adorned with their customary badges of sanctity, they came, and bringing in their midst one who had been taken in adultery. She was disgraced and had been exposed and exposed herself to these religious detectives. Oh, Lord, help me here. You see, when you know you got a problem is when the church began to tie steel with religious detectives. Lord, help me with this. But that was not enough. They dragged her to the temple, to the presence of a popular prophet, and exposed her to the ridicule of the crowd. Note several things about the dark nature of men seen in these scribes and in these Pharisees. There was a sinful spirit among all of these involved in bringing the woman to Jesus. There was a spirit of self-righteousness that lacked forgiveness. There was a spirit of criticism that lacked love. There was a spirit of judging that lacked compassion. And there was a spirit of censoring that lacked understanding. There was a spirit of condemning that lacked sympathy. And then there was a spirit of punishing that lacked restoration. Then there was a spirit of destroying that lacked a second chance.